Okay, in chapter 4.7 we're starting to combine rules. But before we do that, let's review how to write 2 1/3 as a fraction or an improper fraction. Remember, you take the 2 times the denominator and we add the numerator. So the whole number times the divisor or the denominator and plus the numerator all over the denominator. So that gives us 7/3. That will, we can use this in number C. Now, an exponent comes before a minus. So 4/5 times 4/5 minus, and I'm just going to change that to 1/1. 4 times 4 is 16 over 5 times 5, which is 25. Now, I need this 1 to become this denominator. So all I'm going to do is build this equivalent fraction. So times by 25 times by 25. So 1 is a 25 over a 25. These are equivalent. Now 16 minus 25 becomes a negative 9 over 25. And we can't clean it up beyond that. Okay? And remember, the rules for multiplying are not the same as the rules for subtraction. Now here we have to have an LCD because these are different and this is plus. Okay? So the LCD of 4 and 3 happens to be 12. So I'm just going to do this. And then the LCD of 12 and 4 also happens to be 12. And remember, if there's nothing between parentheses and they're hugged up to each other, it implies times. Now, 4 times what gets me 12? Yep, times 3. So I'm timesing this fraction by 3, and then plus, and what do I multiply 3 by to get to 12? If you said 4, you're right. And 2 times 4 is 8. And now I can actually continue. 12 is already 12, so I just bring that 11 down, plus, and again 4 times 3 gets us to 12, so we bring a 3 down because 1 times 3 is 3. Now here, 3 plus 8 happens to be 11 over 12 times 14 over 12. Well, guess what? I can either go from this direction or this direction. It doesn't matter. 2 goes into here 6 times. 2 goes into here 7 times. Nothing else cleans up. So 11 times 7 is 77. And 6 times 12 is 72. And the fact that it's an improper fraction doesn't matter. We just leave it as it is. Now I could change this into improper fractions, or I could just go ahead and do something sneaky. 2 plus 5 is 7. Plus, and now I'm going to look at my fractions here. What is my LCD of 3 and 8? Yep, 24. So I'm just going to do this sneaky thing. 1/3 and plus 3/8. Now that gives us 7, and I'm going to put a 24. 3 times 8 is 24, so I bring the 1 times 8 down as 8, plus, and then I multiply this one by 3, and 3 times 3 is 9. And so that cleans up to 7 and 17/24. Wow, that's gross. But that's probably the easiest way of doing this problem. If you don't get it, please, please, please ask. Don't just sit there and suffer. Because there are other ways, not just one other way, but there are a couple of other ways that it can be explained to you. Now, remember, a whole number is a fraction over 1. Because this is divide, I use leave it, change it, change it. So 3/4 times 1 over 5. I can't clean up 3/4, a 3 over 5, or 1 over 4. So 1 times 3 gives us 3, and 4 times 5 gives us 20. And that's all we can do to that problem. Whew. Wasn't that ugly? Yeehaw. Now, in Massachusetts, the allowable upper body length of lobster can be caught changed from 3 and 13/22 in 2006 to 3.5 in 2008. Did this amount increase or decrease? And if so, by how much? Yuck. In this case, I think it's nicer if we go ahead and change these into improper fractions. So I take 3 times 32 and I add 13 to that, and then I still put it over 32, and I'm going to cheat and use a calculator. So 3 times 32 plus 13, that's 109, equals 109 over 32. Now, what I want to do is change 3.5. So 3 times 2 plus 1 over 2. And that gives us 6/7 over 2. Now I want them to have the same denominator. 3 times what gets me 32? Well, times 16. So now, on Mr. Goodbuddy calculator, I'm going to take 7 times 16, and I get 112. So it increased. Alright, it increased. By how much? Well, 112, minus 109 over 32, and 112 minus 109 leaves us 3 over 32. Okay? If you have questions, ask. 2x plus y squared. Remember, this is saying 2 times x plus y squared is y times y. Alright? Now, if x is negative 1/2 and y is positive 1/3, evaluate and find what it is. So 2 times, and this happens to be negative 1/2 plus 1/3 times 1/3. Now remember, a whole number is a fraction over 1, and when 2 is in the top and on the bottom, they divide out to 1. Oops, negative 1 divided by positive 1 is negative 1. And plus 1 times 1 is 1, over 3 times 3 is 9. So notice with multiplying, we don't have to have common denominators, but with adding and subtracting we do. So our common denominator, or our LCD, well, that's a 1 and that's a 9, so it's the biggest number. So I have to times this by 9 and times this by 9, and what I get is, I put a 9 on the bottom because it's our LCD, and negative 1 times 9 is negative 9 plus 1. Opposite signs, we subtract, and we keep the sign of the bigger number. Whoops, I ran out of, whoops, sorry about that. I ran out of the viewing window. So opposite signs, subtract them. So 9 minus 1 gives us an 8, and the bigger number has a negative in front of it, so our answer is negative. Another way to think of it is, if you owe $9 and you only pay 1, you still owe $8. And real quick, I want to review the order of operations. They are done from left to right, parentheses or grouping symbols, or exponents. Do those first from left to right, then multiply or divide from left to right, then add or subtract. If you have questions, ask.